Indicators and exclusions. Windows Defender can use both of them. What are they? When would you use one and the other? And how do they play together? Let's take a quick look. Okay, as usual, I got my friendly PowerPoint deck here. Indicators and exclusions. So a brief background on these. We talked about setting this up when we talked about setting up antivirus, the Windows Defender via Intune. And if you recall from that discussion, in Intune we make an antivirus and a malware, whatever we want to call it these days. It's basically telling Windows Defender what to do, policy. And in doing that, we can put in exclusions. And the exclusions can be in the form of just pointing to a file path or a file path folder. Not a great idea. Or it can also be pointing to a process. And if you remember, when we talked about using Defender processes, we're telling Windows Defender, hey, there's this executable. I don't want you to, block or allow this executable. I want you to, allow things that it touches. And that's very confusing. You have people going through the antivirus configuration in Intune, and they're just clicking stuff. Oh, I put the path in there. Oh, what's this process thing? Well, I guess I better add it there too, without even knowing the purpose, the differing purposes between those two. So we're going to focus really on the file exclusions, process exclusions. I'll figure out a good way to demonstrate that maybe in the future. Let's just talk about file exclusions. So we put file exclusions in there, and it's just the file name, which is why we always want to use the path for this, and we want to use it sparingly, only if there's a problem. Don't assume that there's going to be a problem. Wait for the problem to show up or test first, and then you can decide on whether to make an exclusion. So exclusions are good. What's this indicator thing? Well, an indicator, it can be an exclusion too. Indicators are things that we send via the Defender portal when machines are onboarded to Defender for Endpoint, and we send them down to the machine and tell them what to do with those indicators. And there's a couple of different kinds of indicators, and the way we get to them is through the Defender portal. Security.microsoft.com. It's a little weird. We go down the bottom left and you click on settings, and then you see a bunch of your settings in the middle, one of which is endpoints. You go to endpoints, and then you basically get this. And again, let me move my picture out of the way. So click on endpoints, and another thing pops up in the bottom right here, the indicators. And you can see it's files, it's also IP addresses, URLs, and also certificates. I'll maybe do a different video on those. We talked about URLs at one point. IP address is pretty straightforward. Probably not going to use a bunch of those, although you certainly could. Stuff comes from a bad IP address, put it in there as an indicator. More than likely, you're probably using a URL. Just a domain name. Certificates are great, though. Certificates can also be used for files, if files have been assigned by a certificate. But a quick and easy way to identify files is with the file itself and with a file hash. Not a path to the file, but the actual hash of the file. So it doesn't matter where that file is, and it also doesn't matter what the file's name is. You can rename this file. It will still evaluate to the same hash. So hashes are very powerful, and you can see I have a couple of hashes in here for blocking. They could also be allows. No problem. In fact, you probably will use it for an allow here or there, just as a quick central way to send those settings out. When you create one of these, you can also have it make alerts if a Defender and a malware on the device, or the EDR on the device actually tells detects this file hash, we can send an alert up to the portal. So you can see our alert severities here. I have one for informational, one for high, up to you when you make this. And you also see you can expire them. So maybe there's a temporary file that needs to be run or blocked for a certain amount of time. You're just maybe testing. You don't want to worry about forgetting about about this. So you can expire them. You can see I have one expire in there for the end of this month. All right, so that's all great. How do you create these hashes? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it's actually not too hard to do. The hash is made by a hashing function, preferably a strong one. SHA-256 is the one I've used in both these examples. And these are two different examples here of how to create this. Now, this algorithm will evaluate to the same hash every time, no matter what. Everybody knows the algorithm. The power of the algorithm is, even if you know the algorithm, the formula, and you know the result, you cannot put the original file back together from that. And you also cannot trick it into evaluating into a different result. So a couple of good things that hashes give us. The problem with a hash is if anything changes in that file, if it gets updated just the least little itty bitty bit, even by 1 bit, the hash will completely change. You could have no numbers the same after just changing a couple of bits in the file itself. So if you're using an executable for this, a program, realize that you will have to continually update the hash. Creating new hashes, uploading those hashes, excuse me, every time the file, the program gets updated. Unlike exclusions, where you're just pointing at the executable and a path, well, you don't have to update that unless the executable changes or the path changes. So for these indicators, you do need to do that. All right, so the top example is using a command line utility, certutil, to create the hash file. So certutil-hash file, the path to the hash, and then the hashing function, in this case, SHA-256. And then it creates that long string. That's your hash. Copy that, put that in the portal. That's it. Down at the bottom, well, middle, is a PowerShell version of that get-file hash. Same path, same algorithm, same result. All right, so you take that, you just copy that string right there, that hash string, and you go to the previous section. I'll click up here, and you add an item, and you put that hash in there. You're going to give the hash a name, put the hash in, tell it the alert severity, the action, if you want it to expire, all that fun stuff. It's pretty easy to do once you get the hash. All right, so what then? Well, then you see how it works. And if you just go and put a block in and wait for a while, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. It'll still be allowed. Why is that, you ask? Well, because Windows itself, the Windows devices, and we're talking about Windows devices, you can also use these on Macintosh. We'll get into some Macintosh in a different video, but on Windows devices, the devices themselves are not computing hashes of files. It's a performance issue, so you'll want to test that out as well, but understand that they're not doing it. So if you just upload a hash and you expect that to either allow or block for files, it ain't going to work right away, probably. Now, you do see it working once in a while for whatever reason, but it will be unreliable and probably will not work at all until you turn that on. How do you turn that on? Well, if you look on my screen in the bottom right, here's a get MP preference. This is our old buddy, the get MP preference command. Our other buddy is get MP computer status to see how Defender is working on the device, and Defender for Endpoint. And this one is preference, where you can see the preferences, and one of them is enable hash or file hash computation. You can see it's set to true in this image. That's what you need it to be set to. You can use a set-np preference for this one, but you can also do it through Intune. And that's what I have on the top. So we're going to do it through Intune. A couple of ways you can do it. I think if you can do it through a catalog settings, that's a good way to do it. My preferences for how to set up security settings, antivirus, and Defender settings is if you can do it through that security node over on the left, the device security node. That's a good thing because it's got all the settings you want on it in the antivirus, firewall, whatever. If not there, I like settings catalog now. Didn't like it when it first came out, but I kind of like it now. It's pretty easy to search through. So this one I found in settings catalogs. They started putting administrative templates in the settings catalog, which is nice. And this one, you can just search for file, hash, computation, whatever, and you'll find it. So this one's under the administrative templates, Windows components, Defender antivirus, MP engine, enable file hash computation feature, enable that. Now Windows will be able to use those indicators. You have to send this out to your Windows machines. Okay. Once you do that, how's that look from the user's point of view? Well, here's one of those hashes that I made was for this Notepad Plus that you can freely download. I renamed the install file to notepadplus.exe, and it's an indicator now, and this user tried to run it as an administrator. It requires administrators to install this, and it blocked that administrator. And they'll see it in two ways. First of all, the obvious one right in the middle, but also on the bottom right, you'll get a notification pop up, and you can repeat it if you click on that. And you can see this one says this content is blocked. So, and it actually has the name that I put on it for this one as well. So that's kind of cool. They'll get that. And then you'll also see it in the portal, right? If informational, high severity, whatever severity you have chosen for this indicator. All right. So, what about, what if we created a block and then it's being blocked, great, but all of a sudden we discover, well, some people actually need to install that and we need to get around it. What do we do then? Well, what we don't do is start turning everything off in Intune or putting people into some exclusion group or computers into an exclusion group. You could do that, but you don't want to totally destroy the protection on a device. You want to be as specific as possible for a short amount of time as possible and as quickly as possible. So the best way to do that, and we've talked about this in another video, a great option inside of the Defender portal is to place an onboarded Defender for Endpoint device into troubleshooting mode. Right? You go to the assets in the Defender portal, click on the device. In the upper right, there's a little drop-down box of all the things you can do, like run a scan, isolate the device, bunch of other stuff. Down towards the bottom, troubleshooting mode. You choose that, and that sends a signal to that device that it can allow things that it wouldn't have allowed before. Now, it doesn't just start allowing indicators. It doesn't just turn tamper protection off. Doesn't do any of those things, but it allows you to do that. It allows you to turn tamper protection off. It allows you to add an exclusion to the antivirus. It allows you to turn off or to enable or disable the enabling of the disabling of the blah blah blah, the admin merge. It'll let you get rid of admin merge temporarily, so that you can your local exclusions will count suddenly, whereas admin merge gets rid of those, right? Normally we want that. We don't want people adding their own exclusions. That's insane. An administrator should not be able just to add their own exclusions, for obvious reasons. But troubleshooting mode, we can allow them to turn those settings off and then do their thing, and then the settings get turned back on. And as a reminder, when troubleshooting mode gets started, the device itself will take a snapshot of all of the protection settings and MP preferences, all that stuff. It'll take a snapshot of that. It'll let you do your thing. After 4 hours, 4 now. It used to be 3, it's 4 now. After 4 hours, troubleshooting mode gets turned off, and that snapshot that it originally took will get placed into the MP preferences again. So all stuff you turned off will get turned back on. So other registry settings that aren't in MP preference, like admin merge, that'll also get switched back. So it's kind of a great tool. So once you're in troubleshooting mode and you've turned some of those settings off, AV exclusions override indicator blocks. Now, I said that wrong. I don't mean to indicate you need to get into troubleshooting mode for that to be true. Antivirus exclusions will always override the indicator blocks. All right, that's just how Microsoft set it up. So you can put a block in both places if you like. But it's nice to do that because now we can add a local antivirus exclusion, and we can exclude that notepad, for instance, and that will override that file hash indicator of the notepad. It's kind of nice. All right, so use troubleshooting to temporarily block or to temporarily override the block. Enable troubleshooting mode, disable tamper protection on the device, disable admin merge on the device. You're still going to have to do that. Add the local exclusion. Okay, you can do a couple of these things through set MP preference, admin merge. That's a little tougher. You're probably going to have to get into the registry for that one for now until they add that to an easier way. But let me go further on here. So here's a weirdly named device. In the upper right, you see the device menu here, and then turn on troubleshooting mode. I zoomed it in a little bit for you here. And that's all you got to do from the portal side. And then the user themselves, well, they're going to have to be an administrator. So maybe you're using Laps. You can give them the local administrator password. You can do a little bit from the console itself via a remote connection that we call live response. Not a ton though. You can't just do everything from there. You can do a little bit from there, and you can see initiate live response as an option in here. But more than likely, you're probably going to work with the user if it's remote, and then have them do these things. Again, after 4 hours, it's all going to go away, and you can revoke their admin privileges also if you've set that up correctly. All right. Let's move my face up here in the upper right this time. So an example of disabling tamper protection. You see a bunch of red here. We know that means something didn't work, right? Yes, this is someone trying to disable tamper protection before troubleshooting mode has been turned on. You get all sorts of excuses. It's not going to happen. You can't disable tamper protection. If you remember, tamper protection is enabled via a mini driver that you can't get rid of because it's booting before the operating system. And that's the thing that controls the tamper protection, and the tamper protection is what keeps all these other places from being modified. Well, once troubleshooting mode has been enabled, down at the bottom of my screen, you can see works just fine. Tamper protection off. So that's what troubleshooting mode does for you. That's the beginning of your work on the device. And then, again, maybe move my picture out of here. I'll squeeze me over there. You can use some set MP preferences locally on the machine. Again, running as an administrator, okay, so the regular users still can't do this. You can see disable tamper protection, disable real-time and behavioral monitoring. You might need to do that. You could probably get away without doing those, though, for any of this, but I just put those in as examples. Right? If you need to, you could do those. The real one is the last one there, set MP preference dash exclusion path, in this case, my notepad. That will still not work because if you remember, we did the local admin merge. We disabled that, and we did the disabling through Intune. Yes, we don't want to undo it through Intune because again, then we got to sync the Intune settings, and we got to remember to take that user's device or the user account itself out of that assignment there. So I always think it's probably better to do it on the device itself. And unfortunately, this one, the easiest, quickest way is to do it through the registry. Not a big deal. He's got to walk people through the correct settings or share the screen with them. It's under HQ Local Machine Software, Policies, Microsoft Windows Defender Policy Manager. As you remember, under HQ Local Machine Software, there is a Microsoft that's right there for local settings, and then there's the Policies. Microsoft Policies is where stuff from group policies go. That's how that stuff gets in there. A lot of stuff from Intune goes there. So that's where you got to look in here. And disable local admin merge. You can see it's turned on right now. We got to zero that out, and then that'll mean it's enabled, and then you can it'll actually pay attention to that Notepad+, because that top command will work just fine. But if you were to actually do a get NP preference and look at the exclusion path after that, you wouldn't see it there until you did this disable local admin merge. You got rid of that. Then if you do the get NP preference, all of a sudden, oh, hey, there it is. And then it'll work. All right. So that's pretty much it. Let me see here. I swear I had a wrap-up slide, but I guess that's it. All right, everybody. Troubleshooting mode is a great tool. Again, it'll disappear after 4 hours. And one of the things you can use it for is when you're working and you're having trouble with indicators and exclusions, right? But remember, indicators, exclusions, 2 different ways to do similar things. Indicators are file hashes, so you'll have to update those every time that executable changes. We're assuming it's an executable, and brings up a good point. Indicators also are limited in the file types you can use for them. Executables and DLLs are what indicators can be used for file hashes. Exclusions, you can point to any file you want. In fact, you can point to a whole folder if you want, the antivirus exclusions. But indicators, the file hashes, are limited to exe and DLLs, which is normally the kind of files we're probably looking at when we're trying to exclude or allow things in the antivirus in Windows. All right. So also remember that the antivirus inclusions or allows will override the indicator blocks. That comes in handy. That knowledge comes in handy, and also comes in handy for troubleshooting. Okay, everybody. So that's it. Exclusions, indicators. We'll talk about some of the other indicators at another time, but I think the file hash indicators and the antivirus exclusions are really what most people are worried about and confused about with the anti-malware. So hopefully this clears things up. Use them sparingly, and only when you see that there's a problem or proactively you know that there's a file out there that is being used for attacks. Absolutely use that as a block. It's one of the huge reasons why it's in there in the first place. Anytime you add an indicator, it should take fairly quickly. It should get to the devices within minutes, 15 minutes maybe, but Microsoft says it could take up to a couple of hours. Right? So remember that as well. All right, everybody, stay safe out there.